Hi, I'm Elizabeth, I'm 34. And last week I got a voicemail that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. It was my brother's wedding planner, her voice shaking, telling me our whole family's invitation was canceled, but they were keeping the $65,000 deposit my parents had paid. I stood there frozen, phone in hand, realizing betrayal can sound polite on speakerphone. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about family, truth, and quiet revenge. I was rinsing coffee mugs when my phone started flashing across the counter. One missed call, then another. It wasn't a number I recognized. I almost ignored it, but the blinking red light of a new voicemail caught my eye. Something about it felt urgent, the way the light pulsed in that gray morning kitchen. I dried my hands, pressed play, and that's when everything I thought I understood about loyalty began to slip away. Hi, this is Madison from Everleaf Events. I'm so sorry to inform you that your family's invitation to Adam and Claire's wedding has been canceled. The deposit has already been processed. Thank you again for your generous $65,000 contribution. Her voice was careful, too practiced, like she'd rehearsed the line. For a second I didn't process it. I just stared at the toaster's reflection, watching my own mouth open but no sound come out. Then she kept talking, explaining dates and policies, and I realized she wasn't joking. Cancelled. And thank you for your contribution. I replayed it 3 times. The words hit harder each time, like someone tightening a belt around my chest. My brother Adam was getting married in 2 weeks. My parents had been counting the days, picking out clothes, debating whether to bring the old family camera. And suddenly we weren't invited. I stood there in the small apartment I'd moved into after my divorce, surrounded by silence that felt colder than the November air slipping through the window. Maybe it was a mistake. It had to be. Adam wasn't perfect, but he wouldn't shut us out. Not after everything Mom and Dad had done for him. I dialed Mom first. She answered on the second ring. Liz? Honey, are you okay? Her voice cracked before I even spoke. That's when I knew she'd already heard. Mom, I said softly. I just got a voicemail. From Madison. She said. I know. Mom interrupted, her words trembling. She called us too. There was a pause, just breathing. I could hear the hum of their old refrigerator in the background. She said Adam and Claire had to downsize, Mom continued. They only wanted immediate family. But we are immediate family, Liz. I heard her choke up, the sound of a tissue crumpling. Your father wired the deposit last month. $65,000 from our savings. Adam said he needed it to hold the venue. Her voice went quiet. He promised we'd get it back after the wedding. The line filled with static, or maybe it was the sound of my heartbeat. Mom, I whispered. You gave him your savings? It's fine, sweetheart, she said too quickly. Families help each other. We wanted him to have his dream wedding. Families help each other. I wanted to believe that, but right then it didn't feel mutual. When I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, phone still in my hand. Outside, the street was empty except for the mail truck pulling away. The smell of cold air and wet pavement drifted through the cracked window. Everything ordinary felt wrong now. Like the world hadn't noticed what just happened. I called Adam. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. His message was cheerful. Hey, this is Adam. Leave it, I'll call you back. He didn't. By evening my thoughts were circling. Maybe Claire's family had taken over the guest list. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone mixed up the paperwork. But when I opened social media, there it was, their wedding countdown post, all smiles and champagne emojis. Tagged were her cousins, her friends, the wedding planner herself. Not a single member of our family. I scrolled past a caption that said, "Can't wait to celebrate with our favorite people in the world." Favorite people. My mother wasn't one of them. I felt a sharp, almost childish sting behind my eyes. I wasn't angry yet. Just hurt in that quiet, dizzy way when your body hasn't caught up to your heart. The next morning I couldn't shake it. I played the voicemail again while sipping stale coffee. Each word clearer now, colder. Cancelled deposit appreciated. I noticed the way Madison hesitated before appreciated. Like she knew what it meant. I decided to call her back. If this was a mistake, I needed to hear it. Hi, Madison Parker speaking. She answered brightly. Hi, I said, steadying my tone. This is Elizabeth Cooper, Adam Cooper's sister. You left a message yesterday about our invitation being canceled. There was a pause. A paper shuffle. Oh, yes, Ms. Cooper. Her voice lowered. I was told by the couple to relay that the event capacity changed. I'm really sorry. It's out of my hands. But the deposit, I pressed. That was my parents' money. Not his. She hesitated again, and for the first time I heard genuine discomfort. I understand. But the contract lists Adam and Claire as the payees. Legally, we have to follow that. So you're telling me you can take my parents' life savings and tell them they're not welcome to their own son's wedding? Madison's breath caught. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, Miss Cooper, if it helps, I'm not comfortable with this either. I've planned hundreds of weddings, but this one's different. Her voice softened. I wish I could tell you more, but I can't. And then she hung up. I sat there staring at the phone screen until it dimmed. The call lasted 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Long enough to confirm everything. Adam had done this on purpose. Or at least he'd allowed it. That night, I drove to my parents' house on Maple Street. The porch light flickered the way it always had. Mom was in the living room, clutching her phone like she was waiting for someone to call. Dad sat by the window, staring at the dark yard. He looked up when I walked in. His face was pale, smaller somehow. Hey, Lizzie, he said quietly. Did you eat? I shook my head. He didn't ask again. On the coffee table sat a thin folder. Bank statements, printed receipts, an email from Adam with transfer details. I skimmed them, my stomach twisting tighter with each line. Why would he do this? Mom whispered. Why would he shut us out? Dad rubbed his forehead. Your brother said it was just too many guests. He said he'd make it right. But his voice cracked on right. I remembered last Christmas, when Adam promised to help them fix the roof. He'd never shown up. He always had reasons: work, stress, timing. But this wasn't forgetting a promise. This was deliberate. Mom, I said softly, did he ask for the money or did you offer? She hesitated. He said they were short after booking the venue. We didn't want him to feel embarrassed in front of Claire's family. Embarrassed. The word felt sour. Dad looked away. I thought maybe he'd pay it back once the wedding gifts came in. He tried to smile. It didn't stay. We sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the clock ticking toward midnight. I looked at them, the people who'd worked their whole lives for modest comfort, who never asked for anything, now treated like strangers by their own son. And something inside me hardened, slow but certain. I didn't say I'll fix this. Not yet. They'd heard enough promises. But as I drove home through quiet streets, I kept hearing Madison's hesitant voice. This one's different. Different how? I replayed that line in my head until I pulled into my driveway. The porch light buzzed. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Everything normal, yet nothing was. Inside, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank page as if waiting for a decision. If Adam could treat his parents' kindness as a transaction, maybe he needed a reminder that not everyone stays silent. But I wasn't ready to act, not yet. I needed to understand every part of what he'd done before I made my move. So I started writing down names, dates, amounts, every detail Mom had mentioned. By the time I finished, the sun was beginning to rise. I leaned back, exhausted but strangely calm. People think betrayal hits like thunder, loud and dramatic. But sometimes it's quiet. It comes as a polite voicemail, thanking you for money you'll never see again. And that was the morning I stopped being the forgiving sister. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew I wouldn't let this end with silence. The silence after that voicemail felt louder than any scream. For a long time I just sat there. Phone still in my hand, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. It was as if my body had gone numb, frozen in disbelief at what I'd just heard. My brother's wedding planner had said it so casually, like she wasn't tearing apart an entire world in a single sentence. Your family canceled your invitation, but they asked me to keep the $65,000 deposit. It wasn't just about money. It was about what that silence meant, what my own blood had decided I didn't deserve to know. That night I didn't sleep. I watched the minutes pass on the digital clock by my bed, replaying every family gathering, every hug that suddenly felt fake in hindsight. The more I thought, the more the anger burned behind my ribs. By morning, that quiet disbelief turned into something else. A cold, sharp determination. I wasn't going to sit and wonder why. I needed answers. The next day, I drove straight to my parents' house. The same white house with the blue shutters I'd grown up in. The garden was still neatly trimmed. The same rose bush Mom always bragged about stood by the front steps. It almost mocked me now with its perfect, pretty calmness. When Mom opened the door, her smile froze the second she saw me. "Elizabeth," she said softly, like she'd seen a ghost. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." She followed me to the kitchen. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, and for a moment I almost forgot why I was there. Until I saw the stack of wedding envelopes on the counter. My brother's face smiling up from them, beaming in his tuxedo. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked. My voice shook, but not from weakness, from the weight of betrayal. Mom looked down. "Honey, it was complicated." "No," I interrupted. "It wasn't. You canceled my invitation. You took my name off the guest list. And you told the planner to keep $65,000 like it was nothing." Her lips trembled. "We didn't mean." I slammed my hand on the counter. "You didn't mean what? That I'd find out? That I'd be hurt? That I'd know the truth?" Her eyes glistened. For a moment, I thought she might finally say something honest. But she just sighed, whispering, "Your brother didn't want drama. After everything between you two, he thought it was best if you stayed away." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the kind of absurd explanation that only made the pain worse. "So instead of talking to me, you just erased me?" She didn't answer. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, my dad appeared in the hallway. His expression was tight. Not guilty, not sad, just defensive. "Elizabeth," he said, "don't come here making a scene. This was Mark's day, not yours." Something inside me broke. "You really think this is about attention? About me wanting the spotlight? I just wanted to see my brother get married." His jaw clenched. "We did what we had to do. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just a cold wall where love used to be." Days turned into weeks. And I didn't call them. I didn't show up to the wedding. I didn't send a gift. But life has a way of unraveling truths on its own. Sometimes faster than anyone expects. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my cousin Jessica. She whispered so fast I could barely keep up. "Liz, you won't believe what's happening. Mark's wedding. It's falling apart. The venue canceled last minute. The decorator walked out. Even the caterers refusing to deliver because they weren't paid in full." I blinked. "What do you mean not paid in full? They had a huge deposit." "That's the thing," Jessica said. "Apparently, your mom and dad told the planner to keep your deposit, but they didn't realize part of that money had already been used to book other vendors. Everything's a mess. People are furious." I sat in stunned silence. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, not yet, but something close. For the first time, I realized karma doesn't always take its time. When the big day came, I wasn't there, but the photos told the story. My brother's perfect wedding, the one my family betrayed me for, turned into chaos. The weather ruined the outdoor setup. Guests complained about the lack of food. The band canceled mid-reception because of a double booking. And the bride? She spent half the night crying in the restroom after finding out the wedding planner had gone public online, sharing how a certain family tried to cheat their way out of a contract. The story spread like wildfire on local social media pages. My family's name was in every whisper around town. Mom called a week later. Her voice cracked the moment I answered. "Elizabeth, please, your brother's devastated. Everything's falling apart. The planner is suing us for breach of contract. We might lose the house if we don't settle." I took a slow breath. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Mom," I said gently, "I wish things hadn't turned out this way. But you made your choices. You're still our daughter," she whispered. "And I was still your daughter when you decided I wasn't welcome," I replied. Silence. Only the faint sound of her sobs on the other end. When I hung up, my hands trembled. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. Just empty. Because revenge, even when it comes naturally, doesn't fix broken bloodlines. But fate wasn't done yet. A month later, my brother called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. "Liz." His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't say anything." He sighed. "You were right. About everything. I thought keeping you out would make things easier for me for the wedding. But I lost more than a sister that day. And now everything's gone. The marriage didn't even last 2 weeks. She left." I closed my eyes. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to hang up. But beneath all that anger, he was still my brother. The boy who once shared his Halloween candy with me, who defended me in school, who just lost everything trying to look perfect. "Mark," I said quietly, "I hope you learn that peace doesn't come from pretending people don't exist. It comes from facing the truth, even when it hurts." He didn't answer, but I heard him crying softly before the line went dead. In the weeks that followed, word spread about how my parents had to sell their investment property to cover legal fees. The perfect image they'd worked so hard to maintain shattered. Neighbors whispered. Friends drifted away. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything. I just lived quietly with a peace they could never buy. Sometimes, justice doesn't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it arrives in silence, the same kind they once gave me. And though the family that betrayed me had paid the price, the truth is, so had I. Because forgiveness, even when deserved, doesn't come easily. It lingers, heavy and unfinished, waiting for the day when you finally decide it's time to let go. I couldn't sleep that night. The glow from the street lamp outside my window spilled through the blinds, cutting the darkness into narrow, restless lines. My thoughts kept circling the same point. My family had been used, humiliated, and then discarded, all for a wedding that wasn't even ours to celebrate anymore. The house was silent, but inside my head, there was nothing but noise. Every memory of my brother felt different now. His laugh, the way he used to call me Liz, the promises he made to always look out for our parents, all of it felt staged, rewritten in hindsight by greed. I lay there staring at the ceiling until dawn started to creep in, painting the walls gray. Something inside me shifted that morning. It wasn't anger this time. It was resolve. If Adam could manipulate our parents into paying for a wedding they weren't even welcome at, then he was capable of worse. And I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I started small. Quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't draw attention. Over coffee, I asked Mom a few innocent questions. When exactly had Adam taken over their online payments? Did they still have access to their banking app? She said no, he told them it was simpler. If he managed it, since tech stuff was confusing. That stung. My mom wasn't helpless. She'd just been made to feel that way. I waited until Dad was out back fixing the fence before gently suggesting to Mom that we could visit the bank together, just to make sure everything was fine. She hesitated, nervous, but agreed. I could tell she was craving reassurance, some sign that all this chaos hadn't completely broken our family's foundation. At the bank, it took only 15 minutes for the truth to unfold. Adam had linked their account to his own joint savings, supposedly for wedding expenses, but the teller's expression said it all when she printed the statement. Multiple withdrawals, large amounts, all tied to payments at upscale venues, caterers, and a diamond boutique in Charleston. My mother went pale. She clutched the paper in both hands, as if holding it tighter could somehow make the numbers change. I kept my tone calm. "We'll handle this, Mom. But we're not letting him know we know." "Not yet." She looked at me, eyes wide with fear, and whispered, "Elizabeth, what are you planning?" I didn't answer then. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want her burdened with what came next. For the next few days I lived 2 lives. In one, I was the dutiful daughter, cooking dinner, folding laundry, keeping the house peaceful for my parents. In the other, I became something else entirely, quiet, deliberate, patient. I called the venue pretending to be my mother, just to confirm the booking details. The woman on the other end was polite, cheerful even, and had no idea she was speaking to the sister of the groom. She told me the deposit was paid in full, $65,000, under Adam's name, non-refundable. I thanked her and hung up before my voice could shake. Then I drove out there. The venue sat on the edge of town, surrounded by old oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The kind of place people booked for magazine weddings. The parking lot was empty except for a few staff cars, and I walked in like I belonged, clipboard in hand, my expression confident. "Hi, I'm here on behalf of the Parker family," I said with an easy smile. The coordinator glanced at her notes and nodded. "Oh yes, the wedding next month. You're one of the family contacts, right?" I nodded again. "That's right." It was easier than I expected. Within minutes, I had copies of the vendor contracts, the payment terms, even the contact information for the wedding planner. I left the venue with a folder full of proof, not just of the deposit, but of how Adam had manipulated every part of this process. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed control. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and all the papers spread out before me. Every line, every signature, every date told a story, and not a good one. Adam had promised the planner additional payments once the wedding concluded. He'd even signed off on a contingency fund using our parents' account. My parents didn't even know what that term meant. The betrayal deepened with every page. I spent hours online reading about small claims, contract disputes, and fraud investigations. I didn't want revenge that screamed. I wanted one that echoed, one that would quietly dismantle his perfect life without anyone suspecting it was me. That's when I noticed something. One of the invoices had been double paid, once from my parents' account, and once from Adam's personal account, both marked as venue hold. That meant I had a legitimate claim of mistaken funds. If the payment source was flagged as irregular, the venue would freeze the transaction until verified. I wasn't just going to expose Adam. I was going to make his perfect wedding unravel piece by piece. A few days later, I called the venue again, this time from a borrowed work phone, pretending to be from the bank's fraud department. My voice steady, professional. "Good afternoon, this is Elizabeth Green from First State Banking. We've detected duplicate transactions associated with the Parker wedding deposit. For compliance reasons, we'll need to temporarily freeze the funds pending review." The woman apologized for the inconvenience and assured me she'd relay the message to management. I thanked her, hung up, and let out a long, shaky breath. It wasn't easy. My hands were trembling the entire time. But underneath that fear was something sharper: control. For the first time since the voicemail, I felt like I wasn't just surviving this betrayal. I was steering it. I didn't stop there. I contacted the florist using the information from the contract, posing as an assistant confirming updated payment methods. Then I requested all invoices be resent to a new email, one I created specifically for this purpose. Every vendor now communicated directly with me, unknowingly giving me insight into every moving piece of the wedding. Every time I received a new message, I forwarded it to myself under the subject line "strings." Because that's what this felt like now, pulling strings that would, one by one, make the entire performance collapse. Still, I didn't tell my parents. They had been through enough. Instead, I watched from the sidelines, pretending everything was fine, even as I built the quiet storm that was about to change everything. One evening, while sorting through the contracts, I found something that stopped me cold. The wedding planner, a woman named Brooke Hastings, had added a bonus clause that promised her an extra $10,000 if she delivered the event flawlessly and without family interference. Family interference. That's what she called my parents. I sat there staring at that line, and something inside me hardened. I looked up Brooke's profile online. She wasn't cruel, just ambitious. She posted glamorous behind-the-scenes photos of weddings, captioned with quotes like, "Perfection is never accidental." Maybe she didn't know what she was enabling. Or maybe she did. Either way, she was part of it. So I drafted an anonymous email. Calm. Precise. To the management of Hastings Events. A client under your service, Adam Parker, is currently under internal review for financial misrepresentation related to his wedding contract. You may wish to verify the legitimacy of your retained deposit. I hit send. And with that, the first domino was tipped. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls. One from Brooke, one from an unknown number, and one from Adam. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I walked to the window, watching the sunlight spill across the lawn. It was quiet again, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty but full, like the air before a thunderstorm. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of joy, but because I finally understood something. When people think revenge has to be loud, they're wrong. Sometimes the most powerful kind is the one no one sees coming. And mine? It had just begun. The morning of the wedding came quietly. There was no thunder, no cinematic rainstorm, just a pale sky that felt almost too calm, like the world itself was holding its breath. I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, staring at the faint streaks of sunlight stretching across the street. It was strange, really. For weeks I had been living for this day, the day everything would collapse. And yet, now that it had arrived, I didn't feel triumphant. Just still. My phone buzzed with a new notification. A picture posted by one of Adam's friends. The caption read, "Can't wait for the Parker wedding today. It's going to be stunning." I almost laughed. Stunning, yes, but not in the way any of them expected. I glanced at the time. 10:12 a.m. By noon, the guests would start arriving. By 1, the ceremony would begin. By 3, I didn't know what the world would look like. But I knew it wouldn't be the same. Around 11, I decided to drive. I didn't have a destination, just the need to move. The air smelled of cut grass and summer heat, and the sky was too bright for how heavy I felt inside. The venue wasn't far. 15 miles outside of town, down a winding road lined with wildflowers and oak trees. I told myself I was only driving that way because it was on the route. But the truth was I wanted to see it. Not the celebration. The fall. I parked far enough away that no one would notice me. From the distance, I could see the white tents shimmering in the sun, strings of lights already glowing even though it was midday. The place looked like a fairy tale, or rather the illusion of one. I rolled down the window, letting the breeze carry in faint sounds of laughter, chatter. The kind of excitement people have before something they think will be perfect. They had no idea what was coming. At 12:30, my phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number. "This is Brooke Hastings. I need to speak with someone from the Parker family immediately. There's an issue with the payment." I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another message. "If we don't resolve this within the hour, several vendors will not proceed. Please call me back." I sat in silence, watching as workers hurried around the venue. A man carried boxes of flowers toward the archway, only to stop mid-step when someone shouted from across the lawn. Then another person ran toward the main hall. The stillness cracked. By 1 p.m. I could see the panic spreading. Guests were arriving, women in pastel dresses, men in pressed shirts, little kids holding bouquets. They smiled, unaware of the whispers growing behind the scenes. A group of staff members gathered near the entrance, gesturing toward clipboards and phones. Then, slowly, one by one, the truck started pulling away, the caterer, the DJ, and eventually the florist. The air shifted. You could feel it even from the parking lot, that uncomfortable collective realization that something was wrong. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Adam. "Adam. Liz, what the heck is going on? Did you talk to Mom? Did she mess something up with the bank?" "Adam. They're saying the deposit was frozen. Are you kidding me right now? Do you know what this looks like?" I didn't answer. For a moment, I just watched as his perfect world began to tilt. The same man who once smiled across our family table and said, "You'll see, Liz, I've got it all under control," was now pacing in front of his own wedding venue, his face red, his phone pressed to his ear. He didn't have it under control anymore. The bride, Emily, appeared not long after. She was beautiful, in that effortless, polished way that came from money and careful curation. Her dress glittered even from a distance, but her face was tight with frustration. I saw her grab Adam's arm, her voice sharp even though I couldn't hear the words. He tried to explain, gesturing wildly toward his phone, then toward the main building. She stepped back, shaking her head. I knew that kind of body language, disbelief turning to anger, anger turning to fear. Another 20 minutes passed before guests started drifting toward their cars, murmuring to each other. Some checked their watches, others whispered behind hands. The photographer stood awkwardly near the fountain, unsure if they should stay or pack up. And then it happened, the call that confirmed everything. My phone rang again. "Brooke." I answered this time. "Hello. Who is this?" Her tone was clipped, professional but cracking at the edges. "This is Brooke Hastings, the planner for the Parker wedding. May I ask who I'm speaking to?" "Elizabeth Parker," I said quietly. There was a pause, long enough for her to piece it together. "You're the sister." "Yes." She exhaled. "I don't know what's going on, but the deposit's been flagged as potential fraud. The venue can't proceed without clearance, and the vendors are pulling out one by one." Your brother is having a meltdown. Can you tell me what's happening? I kept my tone even. I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Miss Hastings. But I hope you kept a copy of the contract. You'll need it. Wait, Elizabeth, did you do this? I didn't answer. I simply ended the call. For the next hour I sat there, listening to the chaos from a distance, the sound of plans unraveling, music that never played, laughter that turned to confusion. Somewhere deep down, a part of me wanted to feel guilty, to drive down there, explain everything, maybe even help fix it. But that part of me was small now, quieter than it used to be. Because I remembered my mother's tears at the bank, my father's silent disappointment, the humiliation of being told, "Your family's invitation has been canceled." This wasn't cruelty. It was correction. By late afternoon, the sun had started to dip. The once perfect venue now looked like an abandoned movie set. Chairs scattered, decorations half finished, a few guests lingering near their cars, waiting for someone to tell them it wasn't over. But it was. I saw Adam one last time that day. He stood near the entrance, jacket off, his tie loose, his hair messy, the confident, charming man replaced by someone smaller. He pulled out his phone again, and I knew who he was calling. I let it ring twice before answering. "Liz," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't know what you did, but—" "I didn't do anything," I interrupted calmly. "You did." He went quiet. "You lied to Mom and Dad," I continued. "You used their money, canceled their invitation, and called it love. You think no one saw that, Adam? You think actions like that don't come back around? Liz, this isn't just about money, it's—" "Exactly," I said softly. "It's about respect." He didn't say anything after that. Just heavy breathing, the kind that sounds more like panic than anger. Then the line went dead. I stayed in my car until the lights of the venue began to fade, one by one, until all that was left was darkness and the faint hum of crickets in the trees. Somewhere inside, the bride was crying. The planner was on her laptop sending apology emails. The guests were driving home with half-eaten cake favors and whispered theories. And me? I just sat there, my hands wrapped around the steering wheel, feeling the weight of everything settle into place. It didn't feel like victory. Not really. It felt like gravity, inevitable, steady, honest. When I finally drove home, the streets were empty. The world looked the same. Mailboxes, porches, wind chimes, but I wasn't the same. I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw them sitting on the porch light glowing warm against the night. My mom looked up as I stepped out of the car. "Did you go?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "And?" I hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Let's just say it didn't go as planned." She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. She just reached out and took my hand. My dad squeezed my shoulder, the kind of wordless gesture that said everything. We sat there for a long time, listening to the cicadas, the night wrapping around us like an old blanket. Somewhere miles away, the remnants of a ruined wedding were being packed into boxes. But here on that porch, something else was quietly being rebuilt. Trust. When I went to bed that night, I replayed the day in my head. Not the chaos, not the shouting, but the moment of silence that followed it all. That stillness was mine. It wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was balance. A way of putting back what had been taken, not money but dignity. And as I closed my eyes, I finally felt what I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real heavy earned peace. The next morning, the world felt unusually still. Not the kind of silence that follows destruction, but the kind that invites reflection. Soft, layered, almost sacred. The kind that seeps into you without asking for permission. Sunlight spilled through my bedroom curtains in delicate stripes, brushing against the walls, catching in the dust like golden threads. I lay there for a long while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of life returning, birds outside, the creak of the wooden floorboards, my mother's footsteps somewhere down the hall. No one mentioned the wedding at breakfast. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not even me. We just sat around the table. The same table that had once been filled with arguments and quiet resentments, now wrapped in an unspoken calm. My mom poured coffee into my mug without asking. My dad read the newspaper, pretending not to glance at me every few minutes. It wasn't awkward. It was healing. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like we were breathing in rhythm again. No explanations, no apologies. Just peace. Around noon I stepped outside. The garden was still damp from last night's dew, and the roses, my mother's pride, were opening to the sun like tiny acts of forgiveness. I picked one, turning it between my fingers. Its petals were perfect, soft, balanced, unafraid of showing color. It reminded me of something my mother used to say when I was little. You can't force a flower to bloom, Liz. You just give it light, and it decides when it's ready. Maybe that's what healing was, not an act but a permission. The first call came that afternoon. It was Adam. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Liz, he said quietly. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. I don't even know where to start. You don't have to, I replied. There was a long pause, then a shaky laugh. You always say that when you're mad at me. I'm not mad anymore. He exhaled, the sound heavy with disbelief. You ruined my wedding. No, I said softly. I stopped something that was already falling apart. He didn't argue. Not this time. I know you think I deserved it, he said finally. And maybe I did. But you have no idea what these last 24 hours have been like. People are talking. Emily left. She took her things this morning. Said she needed to rethink everything. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. It wasn't triumph anymore. It wasn't revenge. It was grief for what he could have been, what we both lost along the way. He hesitated. Do Mom and Dad know? They know enough. He sighed again. I'll come by later. And for the first time in a long time I didn't dread those words. The hours between that call and his arrival stretched endlessly. I spent them in small, grounding things, folding laundry, watering the plants, making tea I didn't drink. Healing, I realized, wasn't grand gestures or poetic closure. It was repetition, choosing calm over chaos again and again. When I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway around 5, my heart didn't race. I just wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door. Adam stood there, hands buried in his pockets, eyes tired but softer than I remembered. He looked like a man stripped of all the layers he'd built to impress the world. Hey, he said quietly. Hey. He stepped inside, glancing around like he was seeing our home for the first time. Mom's roses look good this year. She says it's because of the rain, I replied. He nodded, then looked at me. I don't even know how to start this conversation. Then don't start it, I said. Just sit. He did. We both did. Across from each other at the same table where it all began. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that builds bridges, not walls. He finally broke it. I messed up, Liz. I know that. I got caught up in trying to prove something to everyone, to myself. I wanted to look like I had it all together. The house, the job, the relationship. You don't have to explain. No, I do. He leaned forward, his voice trembling. Because I treated you like you were the enemy when all you ever did was try to help. I took money that wasn't mine, canceled Mom and Dad's invitation because I thought it'd be easier to hide the truth than face it. His eyes glistened, and for once he didn't look away. You didn't destroy my wedding, Liz. You saved me from building a life on lies. I felt something inside me shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. The first fragile step toward it. I didn't want to hurt you, I whispered. I know. I hurt myself. We sat there, letting the truth settle between us like dust after a storm. Later he walked out to the porch. The evening light painted everything in warm gold. My dad joined us, quiet but present, and for the first time in years, I watched them stand side by side without tension. Your mother's making tea, Dad said simply. Adam nodded. I'd like that. It was small, almost ordinary, but in our world that was monumental. That night I couldn't sleep again, but it wasn't restlessness this time. It was awareness. I stepped outside and sat on the porch swing, listening to the steady hum of crickets. Silence had become my companion. Not the heavy, suffocating kind, but the kind that lets you breathe deeper. Healing, I realized, wasn't about noise. It was about the spaces between it, the moments when you stop running, stop explaining, stop fighting to be right. It was about being still long enough to feel what you've been avoiding. I looked up at the stars, hundreds of them, scattered across the sky like memories I'd finally made peace with. The next few days unfolded quietly. Adam started coming by more often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit. Mom would hum in the kitchen, Dad would tinker in the shed, And I'd read by the window, the air filled with a kind of fragile normalcy. One afternoon, as we were having tea, Mom said gently, "It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes silence fixes what words can't." I looked at her, smiling. Yeah, it's like we were all talking too loud to hear each other before. Adam chuckled softly. Maybe we just needed everything to stop for a while. Mom nodded. Sometimes endings are just pauses in disguise. That sentence stayed with me. A week later, I got a letter, handwritten, folded neatly, with my name on it in familiar handwriting. It was from Emily. I hesitated before opening it, expecting anger or blame, but the words inside surprised me. Elizabeth, I don't know the full story and maybe I never will, but I needed to tell you something. I think I was marrying a version of Adam that didn't exist anymore. Maybe what happened wasn't destruction, maybe it was mercy. For both of us. I hope you find peace. I think in a strange way you already have. I read it twice. Then I smiled, a quiet, bittersweet kind of smile that didn't ache anymore. That evening, I placed the letter in my drawer and went outside again. The sky was turning violet, the air cool enough to carry the scent of jasmine from the garden. Adam joined me after a while. We didn't speak, just watched the horizon fade into night. After a long silence, he said, "I'm thinking of leaving for a while. Maybe stay with a friend out west. Start over." I nodded. That's probably a good idea. You think I'll be okay? Yes, I said softly. We both will. He smiled faintly. I used to hate silence, you know. It made me feel small. It used to make me feel invisible, I admitted. Now it feels like home. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Thank you, Liz. For everything, even the parts that hurt. I didn't reply. Some things didn't need words anymore. When he left 2 days later, I didn't cry. I stood on the porch watching his car disappear down the road, feeling an unexpected sense of serenity. He wasn't running anymore. He was choosing. And maybe that was the difference. The house felt quieter after that, but not empty. Just peaceful. Like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding. Months passed. Seasons shifted. Life returned to its gentle rhythm. I took a new job at a local gallery. Quiet, creative work that made me feel whole again. My parents smiled more often. Letters from Adam arrived occasionally. Updates about the small town he'd moved to. Pictures of sunsets. Short notes that always ended with, "Tell Mom I'm doing okay." And every time I read them, I smiled. 'Cause I was okay too. One evening, as I closed the gallery, I stood outside watching the reflection of the sunset on the windows. The same gold hues that had once marked destruction now felt like renewal. I realized something then. Silence doesn't erase pain. Transforms it. It gives it shape, meaning, purpose. It teaches you to listen not just to others but to yourself. And that's what I had learned in the quiet that followed chaos. That peace isn't the absence of noise, but the understanding of it. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or forgiveness or explanations. It arrives when you stop demanding closure and start allowing space. Space for truth, for stillness, for grace. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and let the silence wrap around me like a familiar friend. Because in that silence I wasn't lost anymore. I was found.